Well, g'day folks. Today we are in for an absolute treat. We're going to have a chat to a Footscray, that is the Western Bulldogs, they're known as these days, and the Fitzroy Lions. AFL, VFL legend, played 350 games, 321 of those were with the Doggies and 19 at Fitzroy. Also an AFL Hall of Famer. Back in 2002, he was in the Dogs Team of the Century as well on a wing. He's done it all, and of course a media sensation as well on the Footy Show back in the day. Doug Hawkins today on Legends with Bevo.
Welcome to Legends with Bevo. Thanks to the Holdie, Coopers, and Anytime Fitness Glenelg.
Doug Hawkins, great to have you on Legends with Bevo, mate. How are you going over there in Victoria? We're thinking of you guys at stage 4, just the last couple of days. So, how are you surviving, mate? Are you still able to work at least?
Well, Bevo, we're going beautifully over here in Victoria. Everything's just rosy and everything's so smooth. Mate, we're in deep manure. We're in deep manure. Mate, are we in trouble down here? Fair dinkum. No, mate, I live out in Bacchus Marsh, which is regional Victoria. So we're sort of, mate, we're placed at the third stage. So Melbourne's into that fourth stage of lockdown. We're into the third stage of it at this stage. So I'm about 35 minutes out of the city, out of Melbourne.
Yeah, Bacchus Marsh is a nice little place there, mate. So what are you doing for work over there at the moment?
Mate, I'm still doing my road traffic control work. I'm a lollipop operator. We're not allowed to call it lollipop, but I can. I'm part of the CFME union. I work for a company called Phoenix Traffic. Bevo, I was really amazing, mate. It really was. I was doing nothing. I was doing my sporty nights on the weekend and all that sort of stuff. And during the week, I was not doing anything. And I had a mate from the CFMEU union. He said, "Oh, Hawk, what about doing some road traffic and stop and slow?" I said, "Oh, mate, I can't do this." But anyway, I did it for a week. The money went in the bank. I rang the office and I said, "Listen, you made a mistake. You gave me too much money." And the chicken there said, "Listen, Dougie, that's what you get. That's the money you're going to get from doing this." I said, let me do another week." So anyway, Bevo, that was 9 years ago.
Wow.
So I've been doing lollipop for 9 years. I'm working tomorrow in Queen Street in the city.
Good on you,
a big
mate.
pro build job there. It's a footpath block because they're doing scaffolding work. Mate, it's not rocket science. A very, very simple, basic job. It's very, very much about road awareness and that sort of stuff, mate. So it's very, very simple.
Hey, a very important job, though, you're doing there, mate, and good on you for doing that. And, hey, do you get many people stopping you and saying g'day and, posing for photos and that sort of thing?
Well, I actually get a fair few sort of walk past and stop, and they look at me and they come back and they say, "What's your name?" And I said, "Why is that?" And they go, "You look like that football guy from the Bulldogs, Dougie Hawkins." And I said, "What would Dougie Hawkins be doing standing here? You kidding, aren't you? What would Dougie be doing this job? You kidding? He'd have some real great job." And the bloke said, "Yeah, you're probably right." And they walk off and the show just walk off. And I watch them stand there and they stop again, Bevo. They stop again. They look and go, "You even sound like Dougie."
That's brilliant.
So you get a lot of people look at your mate and you get a lot of strange looks and particularly obviously being a Victorian, being a footy town. Even though I now 5 years, can that be right? 95. Yeah, I finished 25 years ago, Bevo.
Unbelievable, isn't it? How time just flies, Dougie.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing, mate. I've stopped playing 25 years ago. 95 was my last year. That's scary. That is scary.
Let's talk about your career, mate, because it was an absolute stellar one. I mentioned at the start, 350 games. So, Dougie, 1978, you made your debut for the Doggies and you were a Braybrook boy. Talk us through the journey into playing for the Doggies, your beloved Doggies.
Yeah, just before the Bulldogs, Bevo, I started as a junior at Braybrook. I was very much sport as a young kid growing up there. A good mate of mine, Robert Groenewagen, went down to Footscray at the same time as me at the start of 1978. Out Braybrook, we played there for 8 years, played in 7 grand finals and won 6 flags. So I was a 2-time three-peat junior premiership player, and that was obviously, Bevo, all about winning. So at the age of 17 and a half, I went down to the Footscray Footy Club in 78, and it all started there. And my first coach was a bloke called Billy Goggin, the great Billy Goggin from Geelong. He was my first coach. He only lasted 1 week. And after that first game, we got absolutely smashed by North Melbourne, who I barracked for as a kid. Keith Gregg was my hero, and here I am playing at the age of 17 and a half against the great Keith Gregg, dual Brownlow medalist, back-to-back 73, 74. And here I am lined up in my first game. I've come out of, Bevo, you'll love this, I've come straight out of the under-17 grand final we won down at a place in Sunshine called Skinner Reserve. And then my next game was playing in front of 20,000 or 25,000 at the Whitten, the Western Oval back then, which it was. I've gone from playing in front of 5,000 at Skinner Reserve to in front of 25,000 at the Whitten Oval. Amazing.
What a buzz that must have been as well for being someone so young, to make your debut back in 78 up against the big boys. Running onto the Oval, what was it like? It must have been not only a buzz, but a bit sort of frightening seeing these big bodies you're up against.
Well, Bevo, it was amazing because I barracked for North. As I said, I followed the Kangaroos and I watched them in 77 where they beat Collingwood in that replay, had a replay if they drew. So here I am. We ran out first, led by Gary Dempsey, the Calvin Templetons, Teddy Whitten Jr., Alan Stoner, me and Dunstan, Jimmy Edmund, Teddy, as I said, Teddy Whitten Jr. So we had a lot of senior guys there as well. And then all of a sudden, out come the Kangaroos, and there they were, the great Malcolm Blight. Ross Glendenning was playing his first game the same day as I was. So he came out as well. And then there was the Keith Greggs, Wayne Shimmerbush, the list just, David Dench. It was amazing. It really was. And to play against them, we got beaten by about 10, 15 goals. Blighty kicked his 8 or 9, which he always did against us, kicking them from the boundary left and right foot and stand on blokes' heads. He was a free player, Malcolm Blight. I think Blighty played at Woodville. If that might be, is that right?
Yeah, correct, mate. Yeah, Woodville, that's right. Then obviously onto the Kangaroos and the premierships of the Crows as well. He had a pretty good. Although he had a tough run with the Cats though as a coach. He couldn't seem to win a premiership with them, but they did all right with the Crows, so that made up for it, didn't it? So
yeah, he was a great player, Bevo. He was just an absolute freak player, Blighty, and he kicked his 8 or 9 that day as well. But no, then Billy Goggin resigned the next week.
And
amazing, it really was.
You mentioned at the start about EJ, and we spoke about this off air as well. One of your absolute, idols and such a close friend of yours as well. You got the hat there supporting the EJ Whitten Foundation. It's a real shame this year that there won't be a game, of course, because of COVID. But talk to us through, firstly breaking his record, that 320 game record, and then I guess the relationship that you had with him and that close bond that you had with EJ.
Yeah, Bevo, it was really, it was very special. We both come from Braybrook Football Club. Teddy only played 1 or 2 years at the Braybrook Football Club, and he went to Braybrook at 16, 17. And it just became that when I went down there 15, 16, early days to be introduced to sort of some of the players down there, I first met EJ as well there. And EJ used to come up to the Braybrook Footy Club and come in and say hello to the boys. He was just fantastic. And he was like a father figure to me. He was a bit of a villain, a bit of a rogue. But I loved him. He just had this charisma, this character, special about him. And you're right, Bevo, to break his record of 321 at the Bulldogs, it was a great honour. It was absolutely unbelievable. And to have the great Teddy there as well was something I'll never, ever forget. We shook hands. As a matter of fact, I nearly broke my fingers. Then I gave him a hand. When he gave me a flick pass, he flicked the ball back to me. I said, mate, he said, get out there and stick it up, and Dougie, get out there and give it on. And we actually won that day. It really was amazing, Bevo. Just going back a little bit, touching on Blighty. Blighty was coaching Geelong that day in round 17, 1994. That is the first time that Malcolm Blight has been beaten as a player and a coach by the Footscray Football Club.
Wow, what a record.
The first time in 94. Blighty had not been beaten by the Bulldogs. So that was the first time. It wouldn't have mattered who we played, Bevo. We could have played a South Australian combined side, the state of origin, state of origin team or whoever we played, a Victorian side, we would have beat them. We're just ready to go. And that was a very, very special moment. And you touched on state of origin, Bevo, it was just something special to play against South Australia, Western Australia. The great Neil Curley, Knuckles, he was just a fantastic bloke to meet. Great character, and he was like EJ, that old school. There you go, Dougie.
Yeah, so true.
that was Curly. Yeah, going. Everything's all right there, Dougie boy. Yeah, all good.
I used to love him on the boundary line when he was doing the Crows games and be like, Yeah, the Crows are going pretty well at the moment. They're up by 5 goals.
He just a great character, Curls, and obviously Graham Corns as well, and one of my great mates, Tony McGuinness, who came across the Footscray there in 1986. I think I've got a feeling, Bevo, he may have won the McGarry medal in, might have been 85, 84. I think he was only 18. I think he was only young.
I reckon he did win a McGarry. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure he did. He was a superstar, that's for sure.
From Glenelg, Bevo. I think from Glenelg.
You're right.
And I think Kernham was there, and the list goes on and on at Glenelg. There's some great players. So Macca, so Macca was a part of that as well, mate. So, but
that was a good old days, weren't they?
Yeah. BJ, they were great days, mate. They were just fantastic to go to Footy Park, and kick a Vic, smash a Vic. It was just you kick a goal, you could hit with silence. You kick a point, everyone cheered. It was amazing atmosphere, and I remember the great Stephen Kernahan kicking 10 goals in '84 in a losing side. We actually won by about 4 or 5 points. And that state of origin, Bevo, was just, I don't know how I got onto this, but I actually have got onto this because of BJ, obviously. It was just something very, very special.
Yeah, earlier on this year, Dougie, we saw, of course, the State of Origin game, which was to raise money for bushfires. I'd like to know your opinion. Obviously, I don't think it's the State of Origin game when you've got a rest of Australia versus a Vix, because it should be SA versus Victoria State of Origin. It should have been called a charity match. But anyway, that's a whole new discussion for another time. But, it wasn't quite the same, though, was it, as that SA Victoria battle and the SA WA games back in the day?
Yeah, I reckon, Bevo, it wasn't played in State of Origin spirit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It wasn't as brutal and as hard. I mean, it was guys who were playing together in club football, and all of a sudden they're playing for South Australia. And particularly if you go back, you might go back to Peter Motley and Greg Anderson, these sort of guys, and all of a sudden they're up against teammates from Carlton and Essendon and stuff like that. And it was brutal. It was brutal football. And the concept, obviously, the idea was great from the bushfires in Victoria, but the game was very much, it really wasn't a real contact game, was it? It wasn't physical and nothing as brutal as what the 80s and 90s brought from the great state of footy. Is that a fair call?
Yeah, I totally agree. And, we'd love to see the traditional state of origin come back like we see with Queensland and New South Wales in the rugby, and, mate versus mate, like it was back in the good old days. We want to see that, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen, does it?
I don't think it will, Bevo, and I think because we have a national competition now, 2 sides in Adelaide, 2 in Perth, 2 in Sydney now, 2 up in Queensland, and I don't think it will. Again, in saying that, for the guys who get drafted to go interstate, to wear that big V was something that it was real special. It was really, really special, and obviously for the South Australian boys and WA as well. To get that for the first time, mate, it was just something new. It was just amazing. It was terrific.
Yeah, I count myself very lucky that I got to, watch those great games back in the 80s and 90s, that's for sure, as a young lad. Now, Dougie, I want to talk about a very classic story. You were a very fair player. You only got reported on one occasion. And on this one occasion, you actually enlisted, wait for it, Merv Hughes as your character reference. And is it a true story that you actually end up spending most of your time at the pub one night instead of actually focusing on that character reference?
Well, Bevo, no, I got reported. Matter of fact, Bevo, I was playing for Fitzroy my last year of footy, and this umpire made a Barry Crocker, made a shocking decision. So I went over, as an old senior player would do, and I gave him the double barrel. I just launched into him. He said, "Are you talking to me, Dougie?" I said, "Yes, I'm talking to you." So I gave him he reported him with music language. So anyway, I'm at home in Bacchus March having a couple of stubbies for my wife, Raylene. We're just having a bit of a chat. And I've got about 2 hours to kill before I go to the tribunal. So she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to meet a mate of ours at the Braybrook Hotel. We're going to have a couple of beers together. He's going to come in and be my character reference." And she said, "Who's that?" I said, "Merv Hughes." She said, "What?" She said, "Merv, and you have a couple of beers, get a taxi. We're doing a sporting night that night at the Hallam Hotel. So we're going to get a cab from the tribunal across to the Hallam Hotel." So anyway, we go to the Braybrook. We have half a dozen pots. We're about 40 minutes late. The advocate was a guy named Ian Finlay, Fingers Finlay. He said, "Listen, Dougie, don't say much. You'll move out a couple. Just sit there and shut up and let me steer this. But anyway, we get in there, and I said to Merv, listen, we're going to have a bit of fun when we get in. Now, the chairman, Bevo, back then, his name was Neil Busy. Neil Busy was the chairman of the tribunal. We walk in, all the journos turn on their tape recorder. You'll love this one, Bevo. I looked up, I said, excuse me, are you busy? he said, that's right. And then Merv said, in that case, we'll come back in 3 weeks. Anyway, cut the whole story short, I got fined $1,000. So the next morning on radio, we had talk back. Fitzroy people rang up and said, Dougie, you've been fantastic. We're going to pay for your $1,000 fine. And then I had Footscray people ring up Bevo saying, Dougie, you've been great at Fitzroy. We're going to pay for your $1,000 fine as well. Now, I had cash come to the radio station. I had cash and checks come to the Fitzroy Footy Club. I had cash come to my joint and bag of smash. Guess what? I made $7,500 profit.
That's brilliant.
The money kept rolling in. I thought, how good's this? Magnificent. So,
should get reported more often, Dougie.
I actually put 1,000. I gave 1,000 to Mr. Busy. I put 3,000 in the phone account for the horses, and the rest I paid tax. You must pay your tax.
Oh, that's a great story.
It's a true story, Bevo. How's that?
Brilliant. Do you and Merv still keep in touch these days, or?
Yeah, we're great mates. You know, every now and then I'll ring him and see how he's going, how he's travelling. We've become great mates. Merv started the same year as me at Footscray Cricket Club in 1978. Western Suburbs boy, come from Werribee. And we had this connection even back then. He played a bit of footy. I think he played about 90-odd games at Werribee. Went down to Geelong. Funny enough, I think it was Billy Godwin was even coaching down there back then, and actually didn't make it down at Geelong. And obviously his cricket took off with his fast bowling, and he could bat okay too. Merv, he's pretty good handy bat.
Yeah, you're right.
Just a good bloke, knockabout, fantastic bloke. What you see is what you get. Everyone loves Merv. We all love Merv. He's a fantastic fella.
Yeah, well said. I've been lucky enough to interview him a couple of times on breakfast radio, and he's a wonderful bloke. Yeah. Loves his fishing as well.
He does. He loves his fishing, and mate, just a genuine bloke. Again, what you see is what you get. He's a fantastic guy.
We love that, Merv, about all those legends like yourself and Merv, the characters of the game. We don't sort of see enough of those these days, do we? It's too many players are not robots, but they're just sort of restricted in terms of what they can say. They can't sort of bring their real characters out. I guess we saw it with Fev and John O'Brien, but haven't sort of seen in recent years. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, good call, Bevo. And I think you hit it on the head, Bevo, when you said robots have become very robotic. They're very careful and very measured of what they want to say and what they're allowed to say these days, where we could get away with being a little bit cheeky, a little bit, having a bit of a crack. They can't do it these days, as simple as that. And just the way footy has been, the footy's changed so much. I don't watch a lot, Bevo. I'm not a monster fan of how our current game has been played. I know the quarters have been short this year, but in general, I don't like guys kicking the ball backwards and sideways. I like kicking it where the goals are. The idea, all goals in the opposition, you win the game, don't you?
Exactly. Yeah.
I remember when I played, that's how it was.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I spoke to Ricky Nixon recently, who, of course, another one of your friends, he was your manager back in the day. And Ricky said the same kind of thing. They should change the game whereby, having 16 players on the field and not being able to kick backwards in inside 50 or in your defensive 50. What do you think about that? Are there any other sort of rules that you might perhaps think about changing to make the game a bit more enjoyable?
Probably kicking backwards, I think play on, just call play on.
Yeah,
kick it backwards and sidewards. I reckon just call it play on. At the end of the day, if I had a full forward in Simon Beasley or Calvin Templeton, and I want to kick it sideways and backwards, they'd kill me. It'd be mayhem. It really would be. And the tackling at the moment, I'm really confused about it all. As I was a junior when I first started playing, and as I went into my AFL career, your job is to go and get the footy and win the ball, and the umpire should protect the ball attacker, not the bloke who's going to tackle and wait and jump on you and hold the ball in. It's very, very sloppy. I don't like it. It's very confusion, that holding the ball rule. They need to rectify that, and don't change rules halfway through a season or at the start of a season.
Well said.
Holding the ball, Bevo, is an absolute joke.
Yeah, you're right. And I actually feel, I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me on this one, but I actually feel sorry for the umpires because, the rules are
Yeah,
just
no, I agree with you.
the
I
rules are
agree, brother.
changing all the time, and they're trying to learn the game and there's new umpires coming in as well. They feel like they've got the grasp on the rules and they change another rule and it's like far out. And every week there's a different rule that seems to be changing with the holding the ball as well. And I think the players are confused, the coaches, everyone's confused by it, Dougie. Just leave the game alone, for goodness sakes.
I think you're right, Bevo. It is confusing, and you're right. It's hard for the umpires. They've got enough on their plate to do and to worry about these certain rules that can change one week to the other week. Just let it go and just leave the game how it was.
And one thing I absolutely loved back in the day, we were speaking before about the real characters of footy and the golden years of the 80s and 90s. And the Footy Show on a Thursday night was everyone's favourite. Dougie, you were on there. You're a real character. What was your sort of time on the show like? You seem to love it and you seem to play that character of being a bit of a goose on the show so well.
It was, Bevo. It was an interesting show right from the start in '94. Eddie Maguire, Sam Newman, Trevor Marmalade, or Trevor Vegemite, as I call him, behind the bar cracking his jokes. And, mate, I remember the first show. I was on the first show, the original show, myself, Jason Piggy Dunstall and Timmy Watson was the panel. We had no idea what we were doing. We had a script, about a 5-6 page script. And I remember coming out, Eddie said, "Welcome to the Footy Show." And then Sam said something, and then Trevor told a joke. And then I looked at the running sheet. And the first break, we didn't say much about what was on the running sheet. And then Eddie come over and said, "Boys, see your running sheet? Put it in the bin behind you. We're just going to make it up. I'm going to try and steer it. Sam's going to rock it. Trev's going to crack a few jokes, and you guys just jump in when we dare to jump in." It was an amazing show. All around Australia, the ratings was just fantastic. I remember doing shows in Adelaide in the mid-late 90s. It wasn't Dougie Hawkins, a 350-game player. It was Dougie Hawkins from the Footy Show. I'm not saying people in Adelaide didn't know I played, but it was all advertised about Dougie Hawkins from the Footy Show, Sam Newman from the Footy Show. That's how it was advertised. So the show was just a fantastic show. And you're right, Bevo, when you said about it. I was the court jester. It was good for me and it was bad for me. When I tried to do my commentary with Channel 7, I felt that a lot of people had trouble taking me serious because of that role that I played, as you said, Bevo, as a court jester. So it was good and it was bad for me. But let me just say this, mate, I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed my time. Sam Newman was the main man. He was the main man for 25 years. He was a star of the Footy Show. He upset a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it was all about ratings. It wasn't about upsetting people on purpose. But that was the part of the show.
That's right. Well said. And it's sad that, unfortunately, in this PC world that we live in, Dougie, you can't seem to do anything now without offending people. And you're right. I personally love Sam, and sometimes he did sort of cross the line a little bit, but I could see that he was just a down-to-earth, nice guy that just played that character of just being Sammy Newman, wasn't he? So, and your relationship out of the show, do you still keep in touch with Sammy, and what's he actually like as a person? I'd like to know more about it.
Yeah, Sam and me, Bevo, totally different. That makes sense. We're really totally different. And Sam was educated in a private school in Geelong. I come out of a public school in Braybrook. But you know what? We had one word for each other, and it was called respect. And that was very, very important. And the fact that we played a lot of footy as well, Sam just had that respect for me as I had respect for Sam. And he was a very genuine bloke. He'd give you his last dollar, Bevo. He would. He was just a fantastic fella. Very private. Very private. How do I say this? I shouldn't say he doesn't like people. Just doesn't like people who have a crack and stirring, which they actually did. Sam, goose and fool and all that sort of stuff from the Footy Show sort of days. But he was a fantastic fella. I've got an enormous amount of respect for Sam. And by the way, too, Bevo, to the people, he was a great player. He played 300 games, won a couple of best and fairest state footy. He was a fantastic player, Sam Newman. Terrific.
You kind of forget that, don't you? You sort of just remember him as being a Footy Show, superstar in there and being the main man of the show. But yeah, could actually play a bit over 300 plus games, like you said, and state footy. And And let's go back to your own career as well. Back in 1994 with the Doggies, you got some sad news that they weren't going to extend your contract, and you took it pretty harshly, as you'd expect, being a club legend and breaking the EJ record. And then you went on and played at Fitzroy, 19 games over there. Do you sort of regret not being able to play your whole career at the Dogs?
Yeah, good question, Bevo. I look back now and I think to myself, I always wanted to be a one-jumper player. I mean, I had chances to leave the Bulldogs in my early days, in my early 20s. I had a chance to go to Essendon at the end of 1982. But a word called loyalty. I stayed a Bulldog. Mate, if I had left, I could have played in 5 grand finals and 3 premierships with the Essendon Footy Club, but I stayed a Bulldog. At the end of 94, it was only 5 or 6 weeks after I break Ted's record. I didn't see it coming, which really hurts you, Bevo, when you don't get a whack straight in the jaw and you don't see it coming. They're the ones that hurt you. I thought I had 12 months in me. Alan Joyce, the coach, Peter Gordon, the president, and the club felt like that my time was up. And my time was up. So where I come from, Bevo, if someone says you can't do it, coming from Braybrook, doesn't mean you can't do it. So I always wanted to be one jumper, red, white and blue. But you know what, mate? I love playing footy. I just love playing footy. Bernie Quinlan was the coach, pretty good mate of mine. 12 games at the Whitten Oval. Simon Atkins leaves Footscray, goes to Fitzroy as well. I enjoyed my time. I have no regrets playing with Fitzroy. It gave me a chance to do what I love doing, that was playing footy.
That's why everyone loves you, Dougie. Your attitude is just awesome, mate. Well done. And before we let you go, you've no doubt played with some absolute rippers over the years, but tell us sort of perhaps some of those of the ones that you played with and against over your career.
Well, probably playing with blokes of the calibre of Calvin Templeton, who won a Brownlow medal in 1980. Brad Hardy, in his first year in 85, won a Brownlow medal. If we're going down the Brownlow track, that's where it was. Libba, the great Tony Liberatore, the little people hated him. Bevo, they hated him, particularly in Adelaide. I loved him. He was great to play with. You played against him, you want to knock his head off. But he was a ripper. Yeah, he was just a ripper, Libba. I love Libba. Scotty Wayne won a Brownlow in 92. Scotty West, number 7, he took over my jumper after I'd finished at the Bulldogs. Could have won a Brownlow, was a little bit stiff. Chris Grant was a great player. He actually got the most votes in 97, but couldn't take the award because of being reported with the great Robert Harvey from St Kilda. Went back-to-back in 97, 98. So I had some great mates. I played against some of the great wingers back in those days. I mentioned Keith Greig, Shimmerbush, late Robbie Flower. I mentioned Greg Anderson. Peter Motley was going to be one of the all-time great players, but tragically was injured in that car accident in Melbourne. Was going to be an absolute superstar. Craig Bradley become a champion player with the Kernahans, the McGuinnesses, blokes that probably never come. Andrew Jarman, fantastic player, Giles. His brother obviously was. Darren Jarman was an absolute freak, but so was his brother.
Yeah,
that was Andrew. I think they both played at Norwood at the start, or North Adelaide,
North Adelaide. Yeah,
North Adelaide. But Andrew was a fantastic player, as was Darren. I remember the boy Gary McIntosh.
Tough as nails.
It's tough as nails, and and of course, as probably the best. I'd probably say maybe Lee Matthews, Wayne Carey, Gary Ablett Senior was an absolute superstar. So in that era, I played in the 70s and 80s with some great players, and to watch some blokes actually were just freaks, mate. Absolutely freaks, they really were. So for me, I had a great career. I had a great time. I wouldn't change anything, Bevo. It went fast. Here I am now. I'm bloody 60 years of age. It really is amazing how quickly that has gone. And my first year was now 42 years ago. I can't believe it.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's gone like that. So you better enjoy life, have fun. Don't take yourself serious. Don't be scared to laugh at yourself. Life is very short. Have fun.
Absolutely well said, Dougie. That's why you're an absolute legend, and why it's such a joy to chat to you today, mate. And you're looking fantastic for 60, by the way.
Thank you, Bevo. I was going to say 65, but I knew you wouldn't take that.
No, looking good, mate. I just turned 40 recently. If in 20 years' time I look as good as you, I'll be a happy man. So,
Good, brother.
You stay safe over there, mate. Thanks so much for your time today. And yeah, honestly, to you and all the Victorians, we're all thinking of you guys, and hopefully we'll get out of this lockdown and back to normal sooner rather than later.
Let me just say this, Bevo. I love Adelaide, and Adelaide loves me. Thank you very much.
Most definitely.